Hello, and welcome to another short box from Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I'm Zeckthar, and this week we'll be discussing an important person in the Horus Heresy. This week we'll be talking about the first of the 10,000, Constantin Valdor.
Now I know last week that I said we would be discussing Horus Axemen this week, but I needed to get some information from a book I lent to my brother, who unfortunately has taken the week off. Said something about going golfing. Regardless, the problem is I have no idea where he put my book, so I have to wait for him to come back, which should be this weekend, so I just decided to swap the two characters. But to get on task, there are few warriors in the entire history of the Imperium who have even come close to the martial magnificence, selfless dedication, and strategic excellence of Constantin Valdor, the first Captain General of the 10,000. He was a most excellent warrior, and a being of supernatural stature and gravitas, such that many had likened him to one of the primarchs of the Space Marine legions, and that he could even have matched one of the Emperor's sons in a contest of blades. This is a little over the top, but to give you an idea of just how good he was, he did battle Alfarius, and while it is recorded that Valdor was in power armor and the primarch was not, it ended in a stalemate. Now, mind you, even Alfarius admits the battle was too short to really prove anything. Just a couple of blows and parries. Yet, still fairly interesting. Records of his existence predate any of the Primarch's creation, as with many of the Legio Custodes, who were the Emperor's firstborn genetically augmented warriors. Yet for all his power, Valdor was made and trained to serve a different and far more focused purpose, that of the Lord Commander of the Custodian Guard. And to Valdor, the petty concerns of conquest and glory, dominion and victory, were as nothing when compared to his own sworn duty. Yet Valdor's value to the Emperor was so much more than just a mere combatant. From the earliest days of the Unification Wars, Constantin Valdor was the Emperor's staunch companion, and his loyalty to the Master of Mankind was absolute. The Captain General would rather have taken his own life than risk that of the Emperor. Valdor's devotion to his master was such that there was no act he would not perform, no deed he would not consider, to ensure the Emperor's continual survival. So while Constantin Valdor held a rank in some ways higher than even that of a primarch, and sat at the center of the imperial power on Terra, he seldom exercised his influence, save where his purview was directly concerned, and then never with ambition or extravagance. But should his purpose be challenged, or worse yet, should anyone or anything seek to endanger the Emperor or his chosen representatives, Valdor was a demigod of vengeance made incarnate, unstoppable and unrelenting. Now, speaking of the Unification Wars, this is the first recordings of Valdor and his brothers, the Custodes, now that I come to think of it. Yet it is rumored that Valdor was part of the Emperor's entourage even before the Custodes were formed, a trusted companion and bodyguard to the Master of Mankind. In the Unification Wars, he is noticed in the history books in a few particular accounts. The first being the Battle of Moulin Seine, also known as the Battle of the Red Frost. This was an epic campaign between the Emperor's newly created Proto-Astartes of the Thunder Warriors, a small cadre of custodians led by Constantin Valdor, and the forces of the Priest King of the Moulin Seine Confederation of the Nordic Hives. Although outnumbered nearly 7-1, the Imperial forces were able to defeat the horde of genetically altered warriors, witch-marked men, and zealots of the Priest King, who was captured by the Custodians. After the battle, the Priest King was executed by the Emperor himself. Yet there is speculation that perhaps the Custodes took the head of the Priest King and presented it to the Emperor instead. As I mentioned when I discussed the Thunder Warriors, Valdor was also present at the Battle of Mount Ararat. Constantin had the disreputable honor of slaughtering all the Thunder Warriors after the battle was won to make way for the Astartes. Yet the chronicling I find most interesting is the assassination he carried out on Koja Zu. Now, sometime during the early years of the Great Crusade, Constantin Valdor was assigned the dire task of personally carrying out the assassination of Koja Zu, the minister of the Anatian Steppes, who had committed an unforgivable crime in the eyes of the Emperor. As the Emperor's Imperium had expanded out into the stars during the Great Crusade, millions of pilgrims had begun to flock to humanity's birth world, wishing only to see their ancestral Earth with their own eyes. It was said that unsettled lands on the throne world was already the most valuable commodity in the nascent Imperium, but this was not so. Only one resource was far more precious: water. Minister Zhu was put to death for the crime of stealing water. For this act, and this act alone. Her other treacheries were meaningless in the Emperor's eyes. Her cleansing programs, her trade in forbidden flesh. The army of Jean worked detritus. The minister had sequestered in the bunkers beneath the Germanic steppes. The prospect of her rebellion was never a threat to the Pax Imperialis. Her crimes of apostasy were nothing. She was to die for the sin of her harvester machines drinking the last ocean. Carrying out the minister's execution, Valdor claimed her young son, who would later be known as Ra Endymion, for induction into the Legio Custodes. Now, as the Great Crusade wore on, he took part in many events that we've already spoken of, such as the Council of Nicaea. While he was there, he remained impartial to the council, taking neither side of the argument about psychers and librarians. As far as he was concerned, he was only there to protect the Emperor of Man, standing faithfully by his side through the entire meeting. He was also alongside Lehman Russ during the burning of Prospero, where it is said that he faced over 30 of Magnus the Red's elite blade masters, warriors who could predict their enemies' attacks through psychic precognition, slaying them all and receiving only a single wound in the process. I must mention that while Constantin Valdor did participate in the fighting, he viewed the whole culling of the Thousand Sons as a waste, and only took part in earnest with the slaughter when the Thousand Sons showed their true colors as vile sorcerers. Now, fast forward to the final Titanic siege on Terra, where the Legio Custodes fought alongside the Loyalist legions to defend the Emperor and his palace. They showed no mercy to the turncoat Space Marines. They did not waver, even as megatons of explosive death rained from the burning skies, even as demonic abominations spilled through the veil of reality and chaos titans hammered the palace walls with city-leveling weaponry. Valdor and his 10,000 fought valiantly during the nightmarish battle, driving back one offensive after another. The Captain General was seen to reave through the ranks of the traitor legions as easily as their loyalist cousins would against ordinary humans or lesser Xenos, like Grots. During the final battle of the Horus Heresy, the unthinkable would happen. At the culmination of the siege of Terra, the Emperor led a last-ditch boarding action against Horus's battle barge, the Vengeful Spirit, where he met the arch-traitor in single combat and defeated him at the last. But the cost was appalling. Though they cut down traitors and demons beyond count, Valdor and his fellow Legio Custodes were unable to prevent Horus from mortally wounding the Emperor, and leaving his father's mind and soul trapped in a shattered husk of a body. Grief-stricken, the custodians bore their master back to Terra, there to be interred forever within the machineries of the Golden Throne. They swore a penitent's oath and donned the mourning black, consigning themselves to watch over their fallen lord for the rest of time. Following the failure of the War Master's assault upon Terra, the Emperor's surviving loyal sons led a furious war of vengeance, which came to be known as the Great Scouring, in which they hounded the fleeting traitor legions across the galaxy. Yet, the newly reorganized Adeptus Custodes took no part in this time of violent catharsis and retribution, standing their somber watch upon the throne world and contemplating their ultimate failure. Their records conflict as to how and when. It is during this period that Captain General Constantin Valdor disappeared from the Imperial histories, along with his weapons and armor, which never made their way to the Hall of Armaments. The Custodians elected Valdor's successor from amongst their ranks and continued their watch. Now, some wonder what happened to the mighty bodyguard of the Emperor. And while there have been many thoughts recorded and speculated on, the most intriguing I have found is by a woman named Elizabeth Bequin, who identified the King in Yellow as Constantin Valdor. Now, you may be asking, who's the King in Yellow? Believed by some to be a figure of mere folk legend, the legend of the king and his inner circle known as the Eight have existed for many centuries. He is an enemy of both Gregor Eisenhorn and Gideon Revenor, who have battled him for many years. The king's identity and purpose are unknown, except that it involves the Immaterium. Apparently, one of his goals is to obtain the true name of the emperor in order to obtain power over him, and this has led him in searches from the planet of the sorcerers to Sicarius, to the Black Library. Eisenhorn has pledged to hunt down and destroy the king before he completes his ultimate objective. Besides the Cognati, the King in Yellow has amassed an army of cloned blanks, winged space marines similar to Comus, and possibly custodians, which to me is intriguing. The reason I mention this is because Elizabeth Bequin after entering the pocket dimension known as the City of Dust, was nearly taken before the King in Yellow, but she used Annuncia to escape. The Queen and her own entourage discovered a book whose entire contents were a single name, which was apparently the identity of the King in Yellow. The first words in the book were Constantin Valdor. Well, folks, that be it for the week. Join us next week as we actually give tale of Little Horus. If you like this Vox, please like, comment, follow, and subscribe. Also, check out the shop if you got time. Have a great day. And as always,
Until next time, this is Zeckthar, signing off.